Hello, welcome to Do More Optimism. Today I'm with my son here who loves to be on my podcast these days and with Geoffrey Long. I've known Geoffrey on Twitter for several years. I think you've been on Do More Optimism before. But we've been mutuals for a long time. Uh, you do a lot of very cool stuff. You seem like the type of person who just has a lot of agency, just very agentic type of person. You have a day job, which you can talk about if you want, but also you're running a farm and you're also going to be running a storefront, kind of a farm shop in town. And so we're going to talk about all of that, but welcome. Let me allow you to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I have been on the podcast once or twice. It's been a great community we formed online with some of the folks that have been on the podcast and other homesteaders, and small farmers and other adjacent, people. I appreciate the compliment on being agentic. I do try to be accountable for what I am and what I do and what I want to become. And I think that's really the main thing. I made the comment before that for me, doomer optimism is all about the do. So I try to just be active in making decisions and doing things, that are going to secure my family's future and build a better community around me. So that's kind
Yeah.
of what motivates me.
Well, tell me a little bit about where you come from, how you grew up, kind of the different courses your life have taken.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So my mom and dad are both from here in South Carolina. I was actually born in Virginia. We lived in Maryland, Eastern Seaboard, basically up and down the East Coast. My dad was a chiropractor. He went back to school at Life Chiropractic College in Atlanta. We settled back here in South Carolina, and where I graduated from high school, and then I did a few things after that. Ended up going to three different colleges, played basketball at one. I did a mission for the LDS Church, or the Mormon Church, as it's commonly known, in Canada, learned French, and ultimately graduated, decided to start a PhD in economics. That did not work out. I ended up waiting tables and then cooking and selling cars, all kinds of different jobs, and got married and started a new journey, ended up getting an MBA. We have four kids. We lived in Mexico and Chile, moved back here in 2016, right at the end of 2016. And since then, we've been, trying to build our little homestead, farmstead, whatever, and trying to become, be part of our community and participate as much as possible in the community. Our kids are mostly at, entering adulthood. And so this is kind of the next chapter, I guess, for us, is to continue building that up.
Yeah, well, I guess that's one thing we've connected over is Chile. As you know, my wife is from Chile.
Chile.
His mom. They live on like a little hobby farm there. It's a really nice place just to go and hang out.
Not a hobby farm, a full time. They quit
Well,
their jobs a while ago.
well, they're retired. Yeah. Anyway, where was I? Yeah. Tell me more about your trip to Chile.
So I was working for a company that needed. It was kind of funny. I was sitting at my boss's office, and she was on the phone with somebody else, so I was just kind of biding my time, uploading my resume to Finance Ladders, thinking I was going to find a different job because I just was ready for a change. She got off the phone. She goes, "I need you to move to Chile and run the shared service center down there." I was responsible for setting it up. She's like, "That's shared service center you set up in Chile doesn't work. We need to go fix it." I'm like, "Perfect." I did abandon all pretense of searching for a job and just like was totally on board with moving there. Ironically, we had just signed a contract on the land where we live now. And so I had to fly back to sign the papers, but so we bought the land that we live on now and promptly moved to Chile for about 3 years. And I ran a finance shared service center there for a company that I worked for, and um, really challenging from a career perspective, really enlarging from a cultural and world experience perspective. And we we came back to the States the first Christmas and the first summer because we had made plans with the kids and their friends, and we realized that it wasn't that great. We decided not to come back, so we stayed in Chile until our assignment was over. It was about a little less than 3 years, and so yeah, we lived in right out on the outskirts of Santiago and Las Condes and La Dehesa, and we spent all of our after that trip back and the Christmas and summer, we decided to stay in the region. So we traveled within Chile and within the regions. Um, I hope you don't mind me talking about the geography of Chile for a second, but we went all over. Went to Atacama, went down to Pucón, we went down to Patagonia. We went over to Iguazu Falls, Easter Island, Galapagos. I spent time in Cusco and Machu Picchu and all that stuff. We just basically spent all of our spare time that we could afford to just travel in the region. And one of my kids, the youngest, he was like, "Man, why do we have to go to all these places, man?" He was all upset. And he's like 9 or 10, and I was like, you have no idea. You're super fortunate. You're probably one of a million Americans that has seen everything we've seen. Like it's incredible, and they really do appreciate that now. And, they've had some other opportunities to travel, which has been great. So we spent a lot of time outdoors down there. We were going camping and hiking all the time. It's beautiful for one, but it's also very easy because there's no poisonous snakes. There's no ticks, no chiggers, very few mosquitoes. You have to shake out your shoes to make sure there's no spiders or scorpions. But other than that, it's pretty safe and pretty just beautiful, challenging terrain. A lot of fun. We did a lot of backpacking and stuff. So,
Yeah, I mean, last time I was there, I really appreciated, like, they're just growing so many different kinds of fruit trees and nut trees that you can't grow where we
yeah.
are. I mean, as long as you have irrigation, you can pretty much grow anything there. All the citruses, avocado. And yeah, I was pretty jealous. Because we have a decent climate, but we get a lot of like fungal infections on our trees because it's so humid, and they just don't have that problem. Definitely kind of a Mediterranean environment. Well, did your property when you were gone just kind of get completely overrun with weeds and I don't know, like maintaining or did you have some kind of property manager?
No, so it's like it's a little bit different than all of that. What happened was when we bought it, it was land that was owned by a widow whose kids didn't want it, and it was fully overgrown in plantation pines, which there were different plots that had kind of scheduled harvests and things. There was about half plantation pines, so a little over 60 acres of that, and a little over 60 acres of um, deciduous hardwood forest. And what we agreed with the seller is that she could take a certain portion of the timber, which would give us some areas that would be cleared in time for us to come back and begin building our homestead. So it more or less worked out that way. When we came back in 2016, the clear cut areas were starting to come back in some scrub with some like sweet gum saplings, sawtooth briar, the wild blackberry, dog fennel, and um, I'm going to forget all the species, but all the kind of classic weed species that you'd expect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we took I don't know, about 13 or 14 acres of that and kind of decided to focus on, and then another small plot for the house. And we just kind of tried to maintain that. As when we came back, we built about a 3-acre food forest, or forest garden, or whatever people call it these days. I don't know what the terminology seems to evolve, but we have probably, a, probably about 40 or 50 different species. And we put a solar array in to water, to run the well, and it now runs most of our freezers. So we kind of just started building infrastructure when we got back, and just within that space, it had been clear cut. Unfortunately, a couple of places that were clear cut, we really didn't stay on top of, and they've gone back to scrub. So we've got these, a lot of, so especially sweet gum. That's kind of for people who aren't aware of how the deciduous forests kind of come back. You start with some of those species like sweet gum, and then your oaks and things, if they get enough sunlight, will eventually take over. And so we've got different places where that's kind of that process is evolving right now.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask you, what species do you have in your food forest that are intentional?
Yeah. So the way that one of my friends, his name is Matt Kipp, and he's someone we should definitely have on the podcast. When I was a guest the first time, I said that's what I want to do is have him on. But he's from Western North Carolina and from around Saluda, and he and I I'm gonna digress for a second. We'll come back to the thing. But he and I, we met through homeschooling our kids, and he and his family are just great. We instantly became friends, and we're kind of different in that he chose to follow his passions, and I chose to follow the money. We're also different in that he's a little more left leaning. I'm a little more right leaning, probably in terms of our politics, but yeah, both very passionate about the land and about um, uh, yeah, about the land and about being, useful men and being skilled. When COVID hit, he had nurtured our all of our trees during the time we were in Chile. He ordered the bare root stock and potted them up for us and got them going so that when we came back, we were ready to plant them. And he also helped us lay out the design of the food forest. So he laid it out where it basically goes south to north.
Mm,
It's longer it's longer east-west. So south to north, there's like berry species up to like plums and gummies and um, loquat and things like that. And then as you go up, you're kind of climbing the story. So by the time you get over to the kind of logging road, that's the border on the north side, it's all your black walnuts
mm.
and those sorts of things. And then he's got decoy plants on the edges like mayhaw and jujube and things like that. So that you know are okay. I mean, they're edibles, but they're kind of there to attract the deer, and hopefully the deer leave everything else alone. So they're service
Has
berry.
that worked? Have you? So you haven't
We
fenced
really haven't
anything?
had, yeah, we haven't had a lot of problems. We did fence them all with, with 4x2 wire, about a 10 or 15 foot, you know, length of that we wrapped around the trees with a couple of T-posts. And, they're all bigger now. You know, got a lot of chestnuts now down to kind of the spine of the thing that are very productive, and they're all big enough. The ones we struggle with the most are the apples. It's tough climate to grow apples in. And there's lots of cedars around, so you get cedar rust, things like that. But yeah, we didn't have a lot of trouble with the deer. And I don't know how much that has to do with the fact that we got LGDs not too long after we got here. So it may have just been that we didn't notice them as much with the small saplings being fenced in, and then we got the dogs, and it just that was a big issue.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, how many years is the food forest?
Yeah, well, this is like year 9, I guess.
Year 9. So yeah. So
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of the trees are probably getting pretty mature.
yeah.
And it
It's Matt's design in terms of the species that we selected was that you'd have food from April to October, November, and if you throw in a few mushroom logs, you basically have something out there year round, which is really inspiring and exciting and all that.
are you able to harvest everything? I'm guessing the answer.
Yeah, we can't really. I mean, the berry bushes haven't done well, and there's just so much competition. The biomass this place generates, being subtropical with the heat and humidity and everything, and all the water we get, 48 inches of rain a year on average. We had 24 was 60, and I think 25 was close to that too. It was like a couple of pretty wet years. It's just really hard keeping the sawtooth briar out of it. And they just choke. If you don't keep them down, they just choke out whatever's there. So we really need to go back and kind of figure that out again, because a lot of those have died or been choked out, or there's like a little like 5-inch thing that pops up every year and tries to come by
Yeah.
some sunlight. It's just,
Hmm.
it's a battle. But all the other stuff like, you know, serviceberry, mulberry, filberts, all that stuff are pretty established. We haven't really harvested anything of the, haven't really harvested. I think only one or two service berries. That plant, there's a couple of them, but one of them is it, for some reason, every time we have anyone out here to help us, they cut it down, they mow it over or something.
Mm.
So it just kind of keeps
Oh,
coming back, and it won't die, but it never produces. But we're getting almost, a lot of the other stuff we're harvesting something. We get pears prolifically, kefir pear, peaches, plums aren't very productive. That's yes, more has to do with just kind of climate. It's tends to flower early, gets burned by frost, it doesn't settle on fruit. But goomy berry, we have tons of those. We cannot possibly harvest them all.
yeah.
Um,
I've tried
yeah,
to establish it. I haven't been successful yet. I have a bunch of seeds germinating right now in my fridge, so I'm hoping to
cool.
get a bunch of them going. I'm also hoping. I think I don't know. You might have seen this on Twitter, but I'm hoping to start a edible tree nursery. So I'm just trying to experiment with all kinds of things, and gumi is definitely one of them. I haven't heard of anybody who grows them here, but we'll see.
And we have like a little triangle of them in
Yeah,
one section.
yeah.
The food, the food forest, when we first laid it out, we thought we'd build a house nearby, kind of following the permaculture zones. Um, and when we got the septic tank stuff tested, it was like, I'm not building a septic system with a pump. So we abandoned that and put the house in a different spot. So now the food forest, like, a mile from, not quite,
Oh,
but
wow.
it's like
Yeah,
half a mile, from the
right.
house, which is, completely against permaculture principles. But, you got to make decisions and compromises sometimes. So
Yeah. All right, so let's talk more about what else you got going on the farmstead. So you have livestock. Do you want to talk about your animals?
yeah, so right now we have three Jersey cows and a donkey on the pasture. Well, I should be more specific. We have two cows and one heifer. They're all open right now, so I'm looking to get them bred here in the next month or so. We have a breeding pair of Berkshire Sawyer cross pigs, and we raise their offspring for meat, which is one of our main commercial products. We have about 60 laying hens and about 20 ducks. Mostly the ducks we keep for eggs primarily, which we also sell. Um, we we have a few turkeys right now that we didn't slaughter at Thanksgiving, so we're going to probably they're pretty big now, so we're probably harvest them pretty soon. Um, and then we have a breeding set of slate turkeys that we kind of keep as a heritage breed. And we've got a friend that keeps two horses here, so a little section of the pasture is blocked off for those two animals. Yeah,
So,
that's mostly what we got.
how do you do all this farm stuff while having a full-time job?
I mean, in
High
truth,
pace, like high corporate, kind of like fast paced,
yeah,
high demanding.
I rely a lot on my kids. They kind
Yeah.
of keep everything alive.
So your kids are good at kind of managing things.
I, my yeah, I've got two that aren't at home anymore. So up until last summer, I had four here, and they different levels of interest and capability. But the two that are still here, um, they are good at kind of making sure that the essential things are taken care of, and then on the weekends or sometimes if I have an evening free, I can help out with a project or with some specific thing. If there's an emergency, then I make time to go make sure stuff is good. But
Yeah.
yeah, and we did recently when my two sons moved on, we did hire a guy that comes once a week and helps us. So he helps with more of the heavy stuff, like if we need build fencing or we need to castrate piglets or whatever. He's really sharp guy that's interested in farming, and that's been really fun. Building that relationship, and may have more to do with how we go forward with our farm. We'll see.
Yeah, well, so your goal, I've gathered, is that you eventually want to quit your full-time job and be a full-time farmer. Is that that's the
Yeah,
goal? It's always a
I,
matter of you either have money or
yeah,
time, but not both?
That's your goal.
I mean,
Yeah, I
that's my
wouldn't call it. At this stage, I wouldn't say quit my full time job. It's probably going to be more like my retirement plan is to be a full time farmer. It's
yeah,
going to be more of like that.
right.
But I think, yeah, that's more or less the idea that I had when I bought the land. That I would eventually, create this enterprise that would allow us to live without having to, um, have the day job. But there are certain realities that you have to confront. I've kind of made my peace with the idea that I've got at least a few more years that I need to do this. Hopefully by then all of our debts are paid and we've got all of the infrastructure built out that allows us to,
Yeah.
work the farm without overly killing ourselves physically. Because I'll be a little bit older by then. So,
Yeah, well, it seems like it's a generational project, so you're not just doing it for yourself, but you're doing it for your kids, so your kids can take it on if they want.
yep.
Do you? I know it's kind of a treacherous question to ask, but do you feel like any of your kids would be sufficiently interested to take over the farm eventually?
I'm
I
interested.
think there's a chance. I don't know that any of them have the same vision I do about it. So it might be more of a homestead for them and not really be a commercial thing. But I think when we got back here, the kids were, the oldest kids were mid-teens, and the youngest was, I guess, was 10 or 11. So they kind of grew up through their adolescence. They were really heavily exposed to this, and they were involved in everything. Um, I think they really appreciate the skills that they've learned and the awareness of the things they've become aware of in terms of where food comes from, how we've tried to maintain certain standards about the kinds of chemicals that are brought to the farm and the kinds of, I mean, one of the challenges, people talk about microplastics. It's so impossible to have any kind of enterprise like this without tons of plastic coming through. And, even though we're very conscious of it and try to avoid it, everything from baling wrap or baling twine to the pots for the nursery to whatever, there's just tons of it. And so we try to, reuse and all that. We try to, reduce as much as we can, but it's really difficult. And the kids are aware that we're being conscious about that. But yeah, so I think they appreciate that. I think they appreciate the self sufficiency aspect of it and how we've tried to build a situation with our family where we're more or less able to provide for ourselves. Not 100%. Like I think that's a fallacy you quickly rid yourself of when you start doing this. Is that you're never going to be 100% self sufficient, but they understand that we can do for ourselves, and I think they value that a lot.
Yeah, nice. And then in addition to that, you're also starting up a shop in town
Yeah.
that sells your food and the food of other farmers. I mean, it's just insane to me, like how much you have on your plate. I can't even imagine. But talk about where that idea came from. Where you are in that process, all of that.
Yeah, so when we initially, I've had this idea for a while of having like a farm store that would sell our products, and I guess it's evolved over time. So I can't really pick out the beginning from the end anymore. But I'll just say that I had this idea that we needed a store in order to scale the farm, and that's one of the biggest challenges. I might digress for another second here, but one of the biggest challenges for me with the farm is obviously the time versus money question, which is seminal to pretty much anybody doing this. You have to figure out, do you have the time? Do you have the money? Do you have one that you can use to create the other or whatever? But the other thing is this kind of how do you scale? So you start off and you start building infrastructure. So you build your first pasture fence and you build your first chicken tractors, and you set up your hog pens, and you put in water lines and you do all these things. And you get to a point where you're operating. And when you're doing it part time, then anytime something breaks, well, there goes that weekend you were going to build that second chicken tractor. And so scaling just gets harder and harder. There's so much friction because of maintenance. Um, but the other aspect of scaling is, securing the market that is going to allow you to sell the product you're going to produce. So I always thought we needed it for scale from the market side of things. And the other thing that's evolved in my thinking about this is what are the habits of the consumer? And when you look at, a lot of small farms, we're not good marketers. And that's especially true of me. We'll devote that. We build a way of approaching the market that fits in with consumer habits and custom and all that. So I kept thinking, man, these farmers markets are great. And people tell you how much they love your product and they're going to come back next week. And they do. But then as soon as you close up the farmers market and it shuts down for the season, they're like, well, I'll see you next year. And it's like, well, the pigs are going to keep growing. What am I going to do with all these pigs? So I had this idea, and I talked to Ashley about this on one of the previous episodes, but the farmers market's kind of like vacation for food shopping, and it's like a novelty, or it's whatever, but it's not part of your day to day. It's not part of your, this is what I do. This is how I buy my food. It's kind of like, oh, look, I bought something in a farmer's market, but it's not, really part of your lifestyle. So I wanted to change that. The other thing is, our downtown is one of those downtowns that got gutted by Walmart, back in the mid '80s, basically. Yeah, I remember shopping the downtown. I bought sporting goods and clothing and different things in the downtown. And then when Walmart came, kind of all just evaporated. It started kind of coming back a bit in the late 2010s. So 2018, 2019, people could buy a building in our downtown for like $20,000 in the mid 2010s. We looked at a couple. We never made a decision to buy one. We then one came available. I saw it and bought it. And I thought I'd love to put a store here. That didn't really work out. We had a long-term tenant there that was, that wanted to continue to work with us and use that building. So it kind of became an investment property, and that's great. Working out okay. But then this other building came available. It's closer to our downtown. It has a long history. It's been there for probably 100 years plus. I mean, on the register, it was built in 1941, but we know the masonry goes back to probably the 1800s at least. And it was available, and it seemed like a really great location. So we went ahead and jumped in. So at that point, that was about 2.5 years ago, almost 3. It'll be 3 in July, so it's been a while. We just started working at it when we could afford it. When we had the money, we did stuff. So as we started working on it, the concept of what it would be evolved. And so now where we're aiming is for essentially a local food grocery and zero waste refillery. So it'll be kind of a little bit of both of those things, and it'll end up being almost like a small full service grocery. And we'll have a full commercial kitchen. We'll have, some cleaning products and some personal care products, oils, vinegar, spices, local meats, local dairy, local produce, local eggs. But then we'll have a bunch of bulk foods that'll be available as well. So you can come and stock up your pantry, and you can fill your freezer and all that. And, we're going to try to really highlight, low food miles and low package waste as our main drivers of why you shop with us. In addition to like the best quality or the most, healthy or ecologically friendly products we can provide. So.
Yeah. So this process, you've had to do a lot of renovation. What is the main renovations you've had to do?
Well, I hate to tell people how many mistakes we've made, but we didn't really, we had an engineer look at the building, but we didn't have an inspector look at the building. And that was a mistake. We should have had an inspector just point out some issues we were going to have. And so we weren't prepared for some of those, but we had to redo the roof and we had to tear out the entire flooring, subflooring and joists and everything. So it's got the old dimensional 2x12 or 14 heart pine floor system that was still in really good shape in most places, but since in a previous portion of the building's life, the roof had not been, didn't have integrity. There was space, spots where it was rotted out. And so the builder came to us and they said, look, I'm glad to put a floor down, but I can't level it. I mean, at all, really. And, the best bet is just take this out and start over. That was a big piece of the renovation. And then we had to, do everything up to commercial code. So all the electrical, plumbing, mechanicals were new. And so, yeah, it's been a bit of a journey. It's cost more than we expected,
And
but it's
you've
passion.
done a lot of
Loves
it
it.
yourself from what I've seen on Twitter.
Done, what they'll let us, they won't, the building inspector won't let us do, any of the mechanicals or the electrical or plumbing, but they'll let us do, any of the finished work. And we've done a lot of that ourselves. Really great help from one of my wife's cousins. She's been great. And a few other helpers here and there, the kids. The main thing I've built that I can take any credit for is the furniture, which I'm really proud of because I didn't think of myself as having that skill, but turned out pretty nice. So I'm happy about that. But I think that's probably, if anything, separates me from anyone else, just that I'm not afraid of just trying something and failing. If you're successful, it's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
so stubborn. I usually don't recognize I failed. I just keep trying until something works, and then I go, "Well, look, it was successful." And I'm a glutton for punishment that way. But
Nice. And, so in terms of, like, I'm assuming you've already reached out to a lot of potential local suppliers. I'm interested in particular in your kind of bulk options. I assume it's like beans and grains and things of that nature. Where are you sourcing all that stuff?
I mean, most of that's going to come, from just a wholesale market of some sort. And there's a couple of different places, but what we're trying to do is look at places we can get as local as possible. So, we were doing some research and we found we were able to source grits locally, which is awesome. We're able to source olive oil from Georgia, which is great. Peanuts from North Carolina, things like that. So
Mhm.
where we
Yeah.
can, we are. And, there's, you look at things like olive oils, we can source them, you can source them from multiple different countries. And there's Chile is one of the place sources that we're looking at. Chile, California, and Georgia right now are the three places we think we'll be sourcing olive oil from. So, um, it's going to vary. I mean, there are going to be some things you're going to walk in and go, "Hey, this was growing 4 or 5 miles from
I
me,"
didn't
and
know Georgia grew olives.
I was shocked. I was
Yeah.
shocked, but yeah, there's an olive vineyard there that produces oils. I mean, they're kind of a very high end product. I don't know how many people actually buy it, but we're gonna carry it at least to start, see how it goes.
Yeah. So I assume the process of like reaching out to local suppliers and stuff. I'm sure did you already know all these people or have you like gotten to know them through this process?
Got to know a few through the process, and there are others that we're kind of discovering, as we started engaging on social media, especially Facebook recently, and asking for what they were looking for, and a few vendors had come forward from that and said, "Hey, I'm not too far from you. I'd love to supply you with this or that," and so that's kind of cool. Um, but a lot of South Carolina does a decent job of promoting local agriculture. So there's ways to find vendors and producers through the South Carolina Department of Agriculture, which we're using as well. So there's a couple of different ways that we're finding them.
And so have you guys kind of like made it like you've been in a magazine, so I assume it is public. I'm guessing
Yeah,
that there's a lot of kind of like excitement and hype growing up
I
around it.
think so. I mean, it's almost embarrassing it's taken us so long to get it done. And that's the one thing that's frustrating about building in public. And you really can't help yourself because you're in a public, in Main Street. You're building in Main Street. Um, and so it's so frustrating when you're building in public and people watch you miss dates that you hoped to hit, and they see that maybe for 3 or 4 months no one does anything in the building because you're busy or maybe you ran out of money or whatever the reasons were. But we are very, very close now. So hopefully if everything goes well, there's always a chance something might break at the end here, but I think we're going to be pretty soon. We'll be able to open the doors. So
So by soon, are you thinking like spring, summer?
I think, I think, probably before the end of March.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I assume you're gonna have to hire shopkeepers and uh accountants or you could do that keep that within the family.
bookkeeper, payroll, and taxes, we're hiring out. Um, I mean, that's kind of what I do for my profession, but I'm more of a corporate guy. And yes, I don't have much time for that either. So I'm not going to take that on. But yeah, I think the shopkeeping and work in the kitchen will probably have that mostly in house for now. And we've had a couple of farmers, local farmers that have, said, hey, we'd love to keep the shop for you if you're away. And maybe we can trade so that we can, they can have a little more return on their products and stuff.
So you
Um,
have a kitchen, so is it gonna be like a little restaurant?
Now we don't plan to do any like sit down food service, but one of the challenges being a farmer, a local farmer, a small farmer, whatever is, unless you have the integration with processing, like, like Greg Gunthorpe or Joel Salatin or some of these other guys,
Mhm.
White Oak Pastures, those guys were able to vertically integrate before the recent inflation, I'll say. So they're vertically integrated. If you don't have that, having an inspected kitchen, at least for South Carolina, is probably the only way you can kind of do any value added products. So, this should enable us to leverage a lot of our what are currently waste streams for us. And, and or take some parts of the animals and make them into something that we couldn't sell before that we could in the future, like maybe rendering lard, for example. A lot of those things we're able to do in the kitchen and sell as a product that's essentially like a grab and go in the cooler, and we just have to put an expiration date on it. We don't have to,
Okay.
worry about shelf stable stuff. So there's some advantages there. But the
So,
other
like,
thing
you mean
is,
like jellies and maybe soups and
yep,
stuff like that?
all
Okay.
that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
And
awesome.
then the other big aspect to it is, I think the big challenge for farmers in terms of market is, two products that we sell that a lot of people are very afraid of is a whole chicken and a green ham. If I say to somebody, hey, we sell whole chickens, I've literally had people go, what would I do with the whole chicken? And I'm like, what? Well, cook them. I mean, I kind of was shocked. And then green ham, people are used to buying the honey, what is it? The spiral cut honey roasted ham or whatever. And so they're used to consuming it as a product and they're not really putting much into it. So the other reason I have a kitchen is that we can package things or we can create sauces or brines and other things that we can market to go with the meat so that people have a better time of turning that into something that they'll enjoy and don't feel like they spent, $9 a pound or whatever on some cut that they can't enjoy because they don't know how to prepare it.
Right.
And we're setting it up. Everything's on wheels, so we'll be able to do kitchen, like cooking classes, and it's kind of an open floor plan. So we could literally have like some chairs in the front, go through like some prep and some, theory, and then we can go back in the kitchen. People could actually work in the kitchen with us. So
Mm.
that's, those are kind of aspirational. I don't know how soon we'll do that, but we're definitely thinking that way.
Yeah, and how do you think about it in the context of, like, the evolution of your town? You said that the downtown kinda got hauled out with, Walmart,
Yeah.
big retail. Do you see a possibility of, like, revival of kind of, like, old time kinda country town?
It's come back pretty well. And we've got a couple of really cool places. And one of the things when we started setting up our store, one of the things we did is we shopped the whole town. Went through, we looked at everything, and we're customers of a lot of these places. But we tried really hard to tailor our offering so that it hit kind of a niche that wasn't directly competing with any of our other small town, or downtown businesses, because we feel like what we want is for the town to have an offering that is complete for someone coming into the town, but that doesn't, that you don't walk down the street going, well, this guy has organic and this guy had, you're like, oh, well, I can get wine here. I can make my local meats at this other place. And I can get my coffee at this other place. And, you'll have this opportunity and the joy or whatever of kind of shopping, maybe the way people did in the past where they go to, 3 or 4 different places and get everything they need. But I think one of the big motivators for us was building something for the downtown that's for the residents of Newberry and not just another thing for tourists, because a lot of the downtown businesses, it's like antique malls and things like that, that cater to people that might come from out of town, like, American Pickers type vibe, there's a cool hardware store right behind us called Summers. It was on American Pickers. I think that's kind of almost became like a thing, people come in to go look for antiques or something. So we want to do something that was for the residents of the town. And we're hoping that we can win their business and become part of their food consumption. We don't need to be 100%, but we'd love to be, you know, 5%, 10% of the food dollars. And we've got a Walmart and a Food Lion here. There's another butcher shop not far, just outside of town. That's also, great place. Again, we shop there. No big deal. That's probably our most direct competitor, but they're different too, and we're going to be very different from them. And
Yeah.
so we're hoping that people find a way to enjoy shopping with us, and that we provide enough unique things that they feel like it's worth the stop.
Yeah. And is it going to be called Long Story Farms, or what do
No,
people
it's going to be called Farms on Main.
Farms
Um,
on
and,
Main? Okay.
and our daughter, there's actually another store up in North Carolina somewhere called Farm on Main. We didn't know about that until yesterday.
Oh,
So
no.
sorry, whoever that is, we didn't copy you. But anyway, yeah, Farms on Main, and the idea is like, this um, full-time farmers market, if you will, or like I said, small grocery.
Yeah.
When I explain it to people, some people go, "Oh, like a mini Whole Foods," and I'm like, "Okay, maybe, not
Yeah.
really, but I don't know." Yeah.
Well, you haven't
So,
sold out to Jeff Bezos yet, so, you know,
we don't have our own app either, so we'll see how that goes. So,
yeah. So if somebody's in Mayberry, South Carolina, and they wanna get
Newberry.
Newberry.
Yeah, yeah,
Mayberry. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that I said Mayberry.
that's really funny.
Is it gonna be Mayberry? Is Newberry the new Mayberry?
It could be, man. But I don't know if our sheriff fits the mold, but we'll do our best.
Yeah. So Farms on Main in Newberry, South Carolina. So they should come check you out. Um,
Yeah,
I
hopefully, if anybody's driving through here in the summer, definitely by then we should be ready to rock and roll, hopefully. So,
yeah.
but
Well, I'm
well,
gonna have
yeah,
to come visit. I guess I'm not that far away.
I am so disappointed
By
that I've
law.
never made it up there. I really wanted to come up
Yeah.
after the hurricane, and life took over and things just got crazy. Never made it up there. But yeah, I'd love to meet you and hang out with you guys, and
Yeah.
wherever, here or there, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we're not that far. So definitely should do that. Um, yeah. Well, let's talk we can talk more about kind of what you're doing, but you also have let's talk a little bit about your kind of, if you want to, your political philosophy. Yeah, I know you're kind of a libertarian kind of minded person. Do you want to, and you're also kind of a localist. Do you want to talk about kind of how you think about the world and how what you're doing with all these activities kind of fits into that?
Yeah, I mean, big contradictions in my life are, I'm part of a large, I'm employed by a large global company, and I'm part of a large religious organization. But pretty much everything else I do, I want to keep it. Basically, what I talk about is everything being concentric circles around my house. So, how much can I produce within my own home or on my own land, and then what can I acquire in my community, and then what can I acquire in my state, and so on. So I try to think of it that way in terms of how we spend our money, and if I have a chance to shop a local store before I order from Amazon, I will. I think it's a challenge because so many things that you used to be able to get locally, you no longer can. So you end up having to use those outlets. But yeah, so I try to think about that in terms of how we spend our money, and I really would like to see more power pushed down to municipalities and counties. I think one of the biggest challenges I see right now is our local cultures have eroded quite a lot, and there's a lot of in-migration from other parts of the country into South Carolina, and Newberry is definitely growing and seeing, a benefit of that. And our store ultimately economically will be more viable because of that. And it's hard to kind of, look a gift horse in the mouth, as they say. But by the same token, our ability as communities to maintain that local culture and maintain the focus on who is, who are the vulnerable populations in our community, I think is really important. I think a lot of people say, well, I'm fine if those guys from New York come here as long as they vote for Trump or whatever, whatever it is. And I'm like, man, you're totally missing the point, at least in my mind, because some might come here and they might vote for whoever you think is the right person to vote for president, but they might have every other value completely wrong.
Yeah.
And one of the stories I've told on Twitter, which really annoyed the crap out of me, my sister was on county council in a nearby county. And this group of people had moved in from out of state, and they moved to a place that's way out on the lake. And it was 40 minutes from the nearest large hospital. They've just built another one that's a little bit closer, but still they're 10 miles out of town. They've got this little 2-lane highway they have to traverse to get to anything like an interstate and all that. And they started lobbying the county to have full-time ambulance service outside their community. And it just bothered me so much because I was like, I don't care who you vote for president. You don't understand the values of this community if you think that that's the way we should prioritize how we allocate resources. Like, we have vulnerable people in our community that have been with us forever. And you moved here and you made a conscious decision to live somewhere that was far away from a hospital. So that's something you should have thought of, not, I'm all for the county providing, reasonable, good services and all that stuff, but it just really bothered me. I think that's the big danger right now is our local communities. People move here, they maybe are more politically active than the people that are from here. And they start changing the priorities and they start changing, how those resources are allocated. I think we've got plenty of people that we need to take care of in our local communities that need that focus and less focus on, somebody that wants to have 24-hour ambulance service on the golf course. Like, I can't get behind that. So yeah, I'm kind of libertarian, but I think what I'm seeing, I've evolved a bit. I'm a little more, uh, our friend Basil, has kind of convinced me that antitrust is something I should care more about. I'm definitely very persuaded by his arguments. So I've kind of left some of my more strident libertarian views behind a bit and
Right.
looking to
Well,
see
it's
more
kind of
power
ironic
locally.
that to get the best parts of libertarianism of like competitive small, medium-sized business, you need this kind of really powerful sovereign to kind of like crush
Yeah.
corporations when they get too powerful. That's kind of an irony there.
Yeah, big time. Yeah. And I think it's true that a lot of libertarians are willing to put up with the tyranny of a corporation to avoid the tyranny of a government. I don't think we have to settle for one or the other. I think we should be looking to maximize our freedom and our agency, and especially that we should try to vest our local governments with as much power as possible to be a bulwark against those states and federal governments.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, um, are you a doomer at all? Or are you engaged in these activities because you just feel like it's the wholesome way to live, or are you kind of prepping?
Yeah, no, so I mentioned my mom and dad were pretty typical Mormon preppers when I was a kid.
Okay,
So
well, yeah, you're a Mormon, so you're kind of by default prepared.
I've never said that online, so no one on Twitter knows that. But yeah,
Uh,
it's true. Yeah,
right.
so I'm a practicing member of the LDS faith. Yeah, so which I'm sure is going to disappoint a bunch of people that assume I'm some rather than no Christian, and
I mean,
yeah, I don't want to get
all
into
of
that,
us
but
in
anyway,
VO land know, and we're
yeah.
fine with it's not a big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we have more in common. We don't, but but I'm sure there'll be some debate about that. But anyway, um, so my mom and dad, this story I've told before, which I think is really salient to my own journey, was my dad lost his job when I was about 10 years old, and my mom and dad had been really frugal. They had good savings, but more than that, they were really faithful about this food storage thing that Mormons are known for. So they had a year's supply of everything, and they had 1,000 quarts of canned vegetables. When my dad lost his job, it was like, we got we're good. So he went back to school to be a chiropractor. We lived out of our garden. We lived out of our food storage for the next 3 years. We would buy milk and eggs at the grocery store, and pretty much everything else uh, came from our food storage and savings. Um, that was, what I try to convince people of is that the end of the world doesn't have to be the end of the world. For you, the end of the world might be a job loss or
Yeah.
a loved one passes away or gets very ill. There's any number of ways the world can end for you.
Yeah.
So I think
The
it's
world
just
is
prudent.
guaranteed to end for each of us at some point.
Yeah. It's just
Yeah.
prudent to me. And having it, Joel Salatin talks about having a deep larder.
Yeah.
And that was what I grew up around. My mom and dad, when we'd go visit their parents, we butchered hogs, we canned peaches, we canned tomatoes. All that stuff was just part of growing up for me. And I
Mm.
wanted my kids to kind of see that. So, yeah, we did it. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Another kind of maybe theoretical or speculative question. Um, so, I mean, you've talked about kind of the contradictions that you're kind of living with of like large corporate job and then doing this. Do you see a prospect in this country of, having this kind of small scale, neighborly, kind of strong community kind of, life coming back in this political economy, or is this political economy does it need to change? Or I guess how do you think about your path and you know where you think we're going and what how young people should be thinking about all of this?
I mean, that's a loaded question, but, what I tell my kids is, you know, you want to go to college, fine. I'll be glad to help you. If you want to start a business, I'll great, glad to help you. If you want to invest in some education or some equipment or whatever, I want to help you. But I have not pushed my kids to go to college. I have an MBA. I started a PhD. I value my education. It's great for me. It's opened a ton of doors, but I don't think that's the path for the Gen Alpha, Gen Z. I just don't think they're going to see the benefits of that. So I think, what I tell my kids is they should be looking at starting a service business and other businesses that are less susceptible to be, automated via AI or robotics or whatever, and that they should focus on something local, and that, people who have agency and are willing to put themselves out there are going to find other people who are willing to work at a wage that they could, have a business that's viable and make good money for themselves and provide some employment. That's what I tell my kids. I'm really a big fan of John Michael Greer and Refutopia and the corporate structure and, can't remember the names of all the different places, but anyway, in the place where the corporate structure was basically, had to be chartered by the legislature, and it was for a specific purpose. And then, officers and owners were liable to a degree for the actions, criminal and civil, of the corporations. I don't see much of a change, in our political economy without eliminating fiat currency and fractures of banking and changing how we charter corporations, because it's too easy for corporations to accrue incredible amounts of money and power, and our political system is for sale. So it's very difficult to see how that changes. Um, and I mean, that's probably the biggest doomer part of me right now is that, but I'm not too optimistic we can change it radically, but I do want to be part of the change. So we're going to try. And, the farm is not economically viable yet. If the store allows us to scale the farm, it could be. And if that happens, that'd be great. But it may be a very expensive retirement project that I have to at some point abandon and do and find other ways to be part of our community. So, but I think the store is, well timed both for the economy and for, the need for authenticity. That's the one thing I'm optimistic about is
Yeah.
I think AI is going to actually push people to be more connected in real life.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it in the news. It seems like it's all over the news and at least my Twitter feed. It seems like it's coming really fast. A lot of the white collar jobs are probably going away. Best case scenario. is that it does, incentivize a lot of people to get more, I don't know, jobs that are more connected to their bodies, working with their hands, things of that nature that are also lucrative and, you know, enjoyable as well.
Yeah, and I think we have to, I think some of the communities that have thrived the most have dealt with dealt within their communities. And we talk about in permaculture and sustainable and regen. We talk about circular, loops and that we're going to create. I take the extra milk, and I feed it to the pigs, and I take the, whatever. We don't think about our communities and our economy that way. If we did, why would we send so much money to Redmond, Washington, or wherever, Cupertino, California, or whatever? So, the more we create some closed loops from our local economies, I think the stronger our communities will be.
Yeah. You're raising your hand, Chloe?
Uh-huh.
Do you have a question pertaining to this conversation?
Uh,
Or a comment pertaining to this conversation or something random?
uh,
Okay. You just answered my question.
actually,
Okay. Well,
Yes,
we'll save that for later.
uh,
prolific.
what were you talking about? I don't like
Well,
question for that.
let's talk about it. So, Kalea, we're talking about like the young people and what they're gonna do, and we're talking about how, you know, he's said told his kids that they can go to college if they want, or they can start a business if they want, and to help them out. And I'm also thinking about the same with you because
Okay, I know my
okay,
question.
what was it pertaining to this conversation?
Yeah.
What?
Can I take over your channel now?
Take over my channel? No, he's he wants to start. He wants to, uh, for better or worse, he now wants to start a YouTube channel and a podcast and all of these
Oh,
things.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I studiously avoid putting him on the internet, like on Twitter, but I can't avoid it here. But
Yeah. And I mean, that's something that's essentially mentioned because I've also assiduously avoided turning the farm into a media enterprise, and I've tried to make it an actual farm. And partially it's because of the time investment and like editing videos, but also because I don't want to become Justin Rhodes and, be like, I make more money from the videos than I do from everything else. I just,
yeah, yeah. I
my
mean
heart
that
wasn't
that
in that.
is the kind of depressing part about the whole scene is that most people, if they're making any money at it, they're doing it through social media and workshops and training, and it's kind of like a pyramid scheme.
Pyramid scheme?
In that case, yes.
So like you're just paying money and you end up with nothing?
Sort of like that, yeah. Um, yeah. Um, at the same so, like, I'm thinking about a lot of that too because I wanna start this tree nursery and, from what I've seen from other nurseries, them talking about it, they say about 20% of their sales are local and 80% are shipping because they ship, like, bare root trees, and it's just a reality situation is that you just don't have enough demand locally. And so in order to build the shipping aspect, you have to be online, you have to promote, you have to have a YouTube channel and a website. I think for what you're doing for like, you're producing food directly, it's a little bit different. Like everybody needs to eat, but not everybody needs to buy a persimmon tree. So it's it's a little bit different of a situation.
I do think that online is a big part of our business model. We did do, we end up using barn doors at farm for the last couple of years, and that's been okay. It's expensive. And you get out what we put into it probably, I'm sure, but, it's been hard for me to maintain it the way it needs to be maintained to really be a really great platform for us.
So what is Barn to Door? I'm actually not familiar with that one.
It's just a company that, provides a hosted, web store for farmers. Um, and they have some add-ons that you can add blogs and other things and create like a pretty complete, offering from a web perspective. And they also have a delivery service that they started offering. So,
Yeah. Do you
they
usually
do some different
sell
things.
locally through that, or do you sell more regionally or nationally?
I We have not tried to ship at all. We don't offer shipping. We could on, the USDA stuff. And, maybe I'm a fool for being so hard headed about it, but I really wanted to try to see if I could make it all work within 60 miles of here. It's kind of what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do.
Have you experimented with like CSA models or anything like that, or are you mainly doing farmers markets? in now the
We're
shop?
farmers markets on the website is basically what we've done. I think we are going to look at trying to create some subscription baskets with the store and
Yeah.
see if we can't package together, like, hey, you're going to get like, I don't know, 2 pounds of rice, a pound, 3 pounds of beans, 10 pounds of protein, and fresh produce, and yes,
Yeah.
whatever a month, something like
Yeah.
that. But
Nice.
we haven't really put that together yet. That's definitely something we're looking at.
Yeah. Well, it seems like if the shop is successful, you mentioned kind of two times the scaling that are hard, the marketing and the actual just farm operation. So at least you might be able to, I don't know, work through one type of scaling.
Yeah.
What are
Yeah.
your
The other,
what are your, ideally knowing what you do now about the challenges of scaling the farm operation, maintenance costs and stuff, what are the biggest ways that you're hoping to scale up?
well, I think it was naive to go into this without really going hardcore after some of the grant funding. Like I also need to pursue like an equip grant. Those are the kinds of things I need to do in the near future if we're going to scale the farm.
Okay, so
What I
you
really
haven't
want,
gone for those grants
I haven't
so
done it.
far. Is that your libertarian nature saying like, "I don't wanna
Yeah.
take" right, but you're kinda
Dude, I'm stubborn, man. I am like, if I believe something, I'm
yeah.
pretty stubborn about it. And so I've really fought that internally.
Yeah, you probably talked with this about, you probably talked with Patrick about this online because 'cause he'll just take, like his philosophy is like, I'm gonna get every grant," and he's gotten, like,
Yeah.
several grants at this point, and
Yeah.
he has his own
Well,
reasoning for it and stuff.
yeah, Nate did the
Yeah,
equip grant, and so I need to pursue those. I built a 60 by 20 hoop house that I paid for out of my pocket. So I'd been an RC grant. I didn't do the equip grant. So I think, need to be a little bit less naive about that. I've paid into the system.
mhm, yeah,
It's certainly, it seems fair,
right.
but yeah, part of my libertarian nature kind of has kept me from pursuing that.
Well, if there's anything that the government's gonna be spending money on, that's not what the worst thing it could be spending money on.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. As part of my libertarianism is very, very anti-military adventurism and all that stuff. So I'd much rather spend it on, some fencing and water lines in South Carolina than on bombing
Yeah,
somebody somewhere. So
there you go, there you go. Well, Geoffrey, it's been a great conversation. Anything else that we haven't touched on that you wanna talk about or other things on your mind?
not really. I think we covered pretty much everything. It's fun. It's fun talking to you. Like I said, look forward to meeting you in person at some point.
Yeah,
My main thing is, I try to be really positive on Twitter and try to put something out there that's encouraging and worthwhile.
yeah,
So one guy I really like does the Norman cattle. He had on his bio doing it even though it won't work, and so I keep that in mind sometimes when it feels discouraging. I'm like doing it even though it won't work. So
yeah.
just keep
Well,
on plugging.
you're definitely a very positive influence on Twitter. You don't get caught up in kind of the shit show and the partisan bickering
And
and
online chess.
and that as far as I know.
Too
So
much, yeah.
I really appreciate your account and appreciate you coming on. When you do open the shop, well, one, hopefully you'll announce it on Twitter and I can help promote it. I don't know if that'll do anything. I don't know how many people in Newberry are in these kind of Twitter spheres. After several months, as you've gotten it going, will definitely be good to have you on again to talk about kind of the things you've learned because I think this is a great thing that can inspire, replications and getting your learning about it. I think will be really
Yeah,
valuable.
if we figure out some sort of secret sauce on this, we'd love to
Yeah,
be involved in helping other people do it, or maybe even
or maybe
partnering
you'll
with other
franchise
folks.
and we can become the,
Yeah,
we can become the, you
we'll do
know,
it.
West North Carolina. That's how you're
Yeah,
gonna quit your corporate job is you're gonna become a franchise. You're gonna
yeah.
get
I
rich.
mean, I know you're kind of half joking, but I mean, this is something we talked about. Not so much
I mean, if
franchising, but
anybody can
just
do it, it's probably you. So
yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Maybe. I mean, we talked about again like vertical integration. What if we were to get to a group of investors together, buy a processing plant, and we were able to do stores like this in small towns throughout the Southeast where some of these places are kind of food deserts, and there's maybe enough, uh, people that would be in this market that they would be willing to spend enough to support it.
Yeah.
Could be pretty interesting, So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't see why not. I
We'll
think
see.
it would be really, really beneficial. I think a lot of people would like to do something like this, but they just don't have they just need something extra to kind of get it off the ground. And so if they could be part of a
Yeah.
larger kind of network that can really, really help them, that would
Yeah.
be good.
Like I said, if we figure any of this stuff out, I'd be glad to share. It's funny because, it helps if you don't like to sleep or watch TV. Just got to stay busy,
There you
but
go.
yeah,
There you go.
yeah,
Cool.
cool.
Okay. What do you got to add?
All right.
Mama.
I miss that age a ton. Like I said, mine are older now, but
Yeah.
it's a joy to be
I got
around
an
children.
8-year-old and a 3-year-old, so we're right in the
Oh,
thick of it right now.
fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic. We had all ours really close together, so they were,
Yeah.
they were like basically 7 years between, to have the 4.
That's smart. Yeah, they're pretty far apart in age, so they play together sometimes, but it's not like a natural thing,
Yeah.
So that's but we're happy with them anyway.
Well, really, we're very glad, for just having a family that stayed together, and it's really important for us to make sure our kids feel accepted no matter what. And, yeah, so it's been great, and so I love being a dad. So I've been wanting to be a dad since I was 12, so it was just totally, fulfilling a childhood dream to be a dad. And a husband, that's where I felt like I was made for. And, tried to take every advantage of it.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Geoffrey, this has been awesome.
Awesome, man. Thank you
Next
so much
time,
for having
either
me.
digitally
Appreciate it.
or in person.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, we need to. All right. Thanks. Nice to meet you, Cleo. Have a good one. All right.
Take care.
Watch again.